What's up? Welcome to another great episode of Sports QuaranTV with Chris Dobson. Of course, with me, as always, from the envy of the province, I should say, Gerry Green and the Mirror Machine. Gerry, we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a great show. We don't have a ton of time on each topic, so I've got the clock running. First and foremost, I want to let everybody know we're excited. We're going to close this show out with a great interview I had with Eric Engels, a Sportsnet insider for the National Hockey League. Does most of his work with the Montreal Canadiens. Jerry razzes me every week because he thinks we could do an entire show on the Montreal Canadiens and how he could just set me afire and let it go. There were some big news, but first and foremost, Jerry, how are things up your way?
Oh, great in Zone 7 here. We're doing just fine. Thank you very much. As we say up here, we're running pure.
Jumpins. Jerry, we're going to get right off the hop. Some big news, starting with Major League Baseball. Actually, before we do that, the reason we're starting with baseball and not the QMJHL is, of course, the games in the QMJHL have been pushed again due to a lot of the areas being red. So we're hoping to see some hockey here, some junior hockey coming up, but we're going to move on because there's not a whole lot to talk about. So we're going to start with Major League Baseball. Big news, the Toronto Blue Jays have signed George Springer to a 6-year, $150 million contract. He's a great outfielder. The Jays were linked to him ever since his free agency piece started. Exciting thing for Blue Jays fans, and for even that, it's to see Rogers opening their wallet a little more than you might think they would have. This is the biggest free agent signing in the history of the franchise. That's a good move, but the question you have to ask yourself is, what else could be in the pipeline? I mean, they were linked to Michael Brantley for a little bit. Brantley decided to stay in Houston, signed a 2-year extension there. But to me, Jerry, I think pitching is what we need right now from the Toronto Blue Jays. And I would think that they're probably linked to a few names that are out there.
Yeah, it's curious to me, not being a Jays insider, was another outfielder what they needed, and was Springer the type of outfielder they wanted. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek that should come along with Springer coming to Toronto in regards to maybe a few more garbage cans have been purchased to use in the Sky Dome eventually, or the Rogers Dome eventually, when if they ever do come there. But that's being, very facetious. I'm just saying, of the fish that were out there, the big fish that the Jays have been trying to hunt down, Springer has been on the list. But to me, it always, as you say, it starts with pitching, and I would rather see them hook their catch with a good pitcher, a stud pitcher. And Trevor Bauer, his history, he was shipped out of the place he was before he went to Cincinnati, didn't he? There's an odd side to Trevor Bauer in his personality, which I like. And he backed it up this season with a great year, and I believe a Cy Young in Cincinnati, and is available. And I think that's the guy that I'm more curious about than a Springer. Springer adds some more offense to the lineup, but I think this young lineup will be good in the future, and if not next season, for sure.
If you look at this roster on paper right now, the Jays look good. Their offense is going to look fantastic as well. They got the young guys in there. They're going to need another arm to go side to side with Ryu. I think they go the 1-2 punch, and I like Trevor Bauer. I know some people like him, some people don't like him, but you are right. And you were thinking of Cleveland, Jerry, before he got shipped to Cincinnati.
Right.
But overall, like I said, I'm with you. I think the Jays need another arm. I think they're going to address that. They've got the money. Rogers has proven they're looking to win now.
It seemed the rumors were that the Jays were interested, and a lot of people weren't even signing anybody. And was that just smoke and mirrors? And
right.
So Springer, they do get him at a good price, Chris. I mean, at $25 million per year, which is an astronomical number anyways, is pretty reasonable for a guy who was an MVP in 2017 World Series?
Yeah, I believe you're absolutely right there. Like I said, just because we're short on time, Jerry, I don't want to cut you off, and I do agree with you. Let's move. Big NFL weekend coming up as well. You got Green Bay at Tampa Bay at Lambeau Field. I want to get your thoughts on that first. How do you think this is going to fare? Tom Brady can play in the snow. The forecast is calling for a little snow, but you got to give the edge to, I would suggest it's probably a pretty known fact, Aaron Rodgers, the MVP of the NFL at this point.
Yeah, they dispatched the last game that they had. I was surprised by the ease of victory for them. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay, I thought, was quite fortunate in New Orleans. And turnovers, you can never predict turnovers in regards to an outcome of a football game. But the 3 turnovers that New Orleans committed certainly were the direct reason why they did lose. And I thought all game long it looked like Drew Brees was a little off and trying to throw balls into areas where he shouldn't probably have been trying. But I thought if New Orleans could have, kept care of the ball, I think they would have had a good chance to win that. But I really do see the two old guys going at it in Green Bay, and how accustomed Aaron Rodgers is to Green Bay weather. And that team has been home throughout the playoffs. And I think they're going to be set to take on Tampa Bay and put them in their place.
I'm with you on that one. Like I said, there's just something about it. Aaron Rodgers looks like he's on another level right now. The interesting game for me is going to be on the other side of things. You got Buffalo at Kansas City. Question mark still surrounding Patrick Mahomes, of course, left his last game under concussion protocol. Did take full practice this week. Looks like he's going to be good to go. But overall, you can't count out Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and the Buffalo Bills. I think it's going to be a great game.
And if I think anybody could beat them, it could be Buffalo, who are on a roll. And how close Cleveland came to beating Kansas City. And I know it's without Patrick Mahomes. They had opportunities, and the big part of the game, I thought, Chris, was the 4 minutes left in the ball game, and Cleveland had the ball in their own 25, down by whatever it was, 3 or 4, could have been 4 or 5 points, but needed a touchdown to win. And it was interesting. Troy Aikman said, Romo said, Romo was the color guy. He said this could be the drive of his career. And it didn't go anywhere, and they kicked the ball away, and they never got it back again. And the backup quarterback running for first down from 18 yards away. The backup came in and did a great job. And is that coaching, or is just that the ability of the backup quarterback? Who knows?
Yeah, and so again, I'm unsure how it's going to roll out, but like I said, I would say it this way: if Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes does not play, I don't think there's a chance Kansas City comes out of this. But yeah, I can't see it.
Well, again, Buffalo has a great offense there, and I thought Cleveland moved the ball very good against the Kansas City defense. So Buffalo, who's on a high and have been able to move the ball and have a lot of weapons, and Diggs seems to be the main target down the field. I certainly think that there's an opportunity for Buffalo to win that, and maybe it's a Buffalo season. But I think their best chance, yes, if Mahomes doesn't play, that might be their best chance.
Jerry, we got 2.5 minutes to go. We got to move to the National Hockey League. Hockey season is in full effect and underway. I absolutely love this North Division. I'm having a blast as a Habs fan. They look fantastic. A little bit of a hiccup against the Leafs to start the year, but overall, your Jets have looked decent. What are your thoughts? Are you excited to have hockey back?
I am excited to have hockey back. I'm liking the combinations of Canadian teams playing each other. Surprised with the way Edmonton started. Surprised with the way Montreal has started. I don't think, and I said this to you, I don't think I've seen Montreal play maybe one bad period in their games so far. They're very dominant against Edmonton. They take on Vancouver this week. Meanwhile, on the other end, I thought Ottawa's looked really good, Chris. They've added some very subtle pieces there. They've got some toughness. They've got some guys that can move the puck. They've got a solid defense, and they've got Matt Murray, who's a Stanley Cup winner in nets. I watched them against Toronto. I watched them against the Jets. They move the puck very well. They're not a last place team.
Not at all, and I think they're gonna upset a few teams here in the North Division. And overall, you're absolutely right.
Well, the biggest thing, and I'm not a Montreal Canadian fan, but I do like to watch them because I'm intrigued with the fans and how they react to the way the Canadians play. Very impressed. They've got some great balance there, and the defense moves the puck very quickly in this. When they acquired Petrie way back in the day, Edmonton must be kicking themselves. They got him for nothing, and what a great player, and what a versatile defenseman he can be. He can be offensive. He's quick with the puck. He covers the front of the net. And then you got the 1-2 punch in net. Allen was solid in his first start, backing up Carey Price. I don't know who starts tonight, but everything seems to be my early favorite there in that North Division has to be Montreal.
I've got 40 seconds left, and I'm going to tell you right now just a quick opinion before I get into the Montreal Canadiens. We don't have time, but I want to talk about the Edmonton Oilers, and that is they do not, under any circumstances, get themselves a goaltender. If I am Connor McDavid and I am Leon Draisaitl, I literally demand a trade. There was every free agent goaltender in the world was available, basically, and Edmonton did nothing. I'm sorry. It's a dumpster fire. They got to figure it out. I'm rattled.
Here's my final thought on that, Chris. I do not trust a goaltender that wears number 19.
Oh, I respect it. And as always, Jerry, I appreciate it. We're just about out of time. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Please stick around. We got a great piece with Sportsnet's own Eric Engels, NHL insider on Sportsnet. Take care and have a good week. Excited to be joined now by one of the NHL insiders on Sportsnet, Eric Engels. Eric, first and foremost, thanks for taking time out to do this. I know things are pretty hectic now that you are deep into the, basically, I'm not going to say into the weeds here yet, but overall, with hockey season finally underway, the Montreal Canadiens look absolutely fantastic. You've been a busy guy, so thanks for doing this.
Oh, we're in the fun zone now. Forget about the red zone. It's the fun zone. Hockey's going. We're all excited about it. So let's go.
Well, one of the things, and we're going to get right into it right off the hop. I mean, one of the biggest names for the Montreal Canadiens this summer has been a lot of people talking about Romanov coming on in. He was able to join the team in a bubble last year, not able to play. It didn't take him too long. 2 games in, he's averaging 18 minutes a game. Is that something you were surprised to see? He fit in right away.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by what we've seen from him in terms of the quality of his play, but I was surprised that they gave him so much to bite off, right off the hop. But in one sense, I think it was a good move by the coaching staff because they want to know exactly what they have in him, and they want to know that they can depend on him and potentially move him up the lineup if they want to do that. And I think there will come a time where they do want to do that. So, you could see Claude Julien was a little bit more conservative about how he used Romanov in the second game, where he was playing against McDavid and Draisaitl for the first time and not taking anything away from Austin Matthews and John Tavares and Mitch Marner, because those are big assignments and as big probably as facing the other 2 guys I just mentioned. But they're letting him walk a bit before he runs, but he's certainly up to the challenge. And I've done tons of research about this kid and got to watch him all throughout camp, and he's just somebody initially compared him to Drew Doughty, and that was a comparison that was made not because he's going to be prolific offensively like Drew Doughty, but the comparison was made purely about Romanov's energy and his involvement and his wantingness to do everything on the ice and be involved in everything, and just his excitement level and the way he approaches everything. So, that's a really great comparable in those 2 regards. If you watch Drew Doughty play, you'll see he's involved in every facet of the game, and he is constantly chirping and he's constantly involved in everything and active. So I think that comparison is really fitting, actually.
And you hear, I've read quite a bit over the last little bit in regards to some of his previous teammates when he was playing abroad, talking about he's always the first guy on the ice, the last guy on the ice. He's always smiling. He's there to play. He competes at 110%. I mean, if you're Marc Bergevin right now, you have to be thrilled.
Yeah, I think it was what compelled them to Romanov to begin with, the Canadiens. And I think it's something that has only been borne out over time here in the couple of years that they've watched him in the KHL and the World Juniors, and had him, for their development camp and a European combine after the draft. So those are all things where they've built up this profile of this player, and now they're seeing it come to life. And they were excited about him, probably more so than anybody else before he got to Montreal. And now they're probably really excited about the fact that everybody's seeing what they've seen for a couple of years. And this kid, he's going to have his stumbles like every young player does. There's no young player that comes into the league. And Romanov does have the advantage, of course, of playing 2 years of professional hockey before getting here versus some of the guys that come in at 18 and they're already so impressive. But, this kid is going to be a really good player for many years to come. And he's starting off at a level that's, kind of up here versus here and gradually going. So it's a very exciting development for the Canadiens.
So if you talk about some of the other new guys coming on in, obviously one of the biggest names, Josh Anderson, coming over in the Columbus trade for Max Domi. Josh got here quickly, had was injury prone last year. I know the Habs were looking to have some, to get the Billy that he had on his first year, the scoring that he had. To see him come on in and be successful, the Montreal Canadiens signed him to a contract extension right away. And of course, social media went rampant saying, you guys are going to pay all this money to a guy who's not proven. He's injury prone. I mean, he looks like he's shutting people up pretty quick right now.
Well, first of all, the Canadiens knew who Josh Anderson was before they acquired him, and so did just about every other team that was in the race to get Josh Anderson, and there was a dozen of them. This guy, there's very few people that fit the profile that he has. A player that is 6'3", 220 pounds plus, and skates like the wind and plays like a guy that fits that bill. Like he throws his weight around, he looks for the hits, he's aggressive, he gets to the net. He'll drive the net. The Canadiens haven't had a player like that, in my estimation, since John LeClair. So that's going back to like 1994. Shane Corson came back in a second stint with the team, so maybe he fits that bill kind of, but not quite the speed that you see on Josh Anderson. It's such a unique profile player, and once the Canadians decided that they were going to trade for him and trade Max Domi and a pick for him, they were locked into giving him the extension that they were giving him. And, there's risk involved in it, and they're not hiding from the fact that there's risk involved in it, but they also know who the player is and what he's supposed to be. And I think it must have been reassuring for them to see him start his season the way he did. He's been tremendous through 2 games, but more importantly, it was huge for him. It was huge for Josh Anderson, who went through all those injury issues last year, couldn't play the aggressive brand of hockey because he was playing hurt, and didn't score. He had 1 goal in 26 games. That's not a good feeling as a guy who's paid to score and knows, putting up 27 goals the year prior, there's that pressure that comes on. So for him to hit the board, not just play really well for the first couple games, because he did, to hit the board is huge for his confidence, and we'll see where it takes him.
One of the areas Montreal has always been criticized for the years prior was up the middle. They were lacking their number 1 center. They were lacking the guys. Looking at the leaps and bounds, guys like Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kotkaniemi took last year in the bubble in the postseason. What kind of impact role are the Montreal Canadiens looking to see down the middle now? I mean, what kind of leaps and bounds are we looking to see there?
Well, the success of the team, you would probably suggest, lies heavily on them taking a step forward, both guys, Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and even to a lesser degree, Jake Evans, who's the 4th-line center. Jake Evans has to be a player that he's got to win 50% of his faceoffs, and he's got to be reliable against some of the best players in the world when they get stuck on an icing. Otherwise, that becomes a need as this season moves along. And as we know, needs are going to be pretty hard to fill on the trade market when you're looking at a 14-day quarantine coming from the U.S., or you're looking at 7 days and 4 negative tests if you're coming from Canada, or potentially longer. I have to check into the local rules make it different, which depending on which way you're going. So without getting too into the technical side of things, Jake Evans is a guy being underestimated in that department, but in terms of his importance. But Jesperi Kotkaniemi has to be the player that we saw in the bubble at the very least. A lot is riding on him. He's going to take on more ice. Nick Suzuki, who's obviously showing that he's up to the task right through the first couple of games, he needs to take a step forward. And a lot of people will say he's a sophomore in the NHL, and sophomores tend to struggle. I look at Nick Suzuki and don't think that that's even a possibility. That's what I said before the season. It's not based on the 2 games I've seen. It's just there's a way that he was brought along. He's 21 years old, but way wiser than his years would suggest. And he's just mature and confident and knows what he's capable of. So, yeah, I mean, I don't see any issues in that department, but those 2 guys have to live up to the billing for the Canadiens to be successful this season.
One of the biggest signings for the Montreal Canadiens, one of the things they were looking to acquire right off the hop after the playoff run last year was a backup goaltender for Carey Price. They went out and got their man in Jake Allen. Jake, no surprise or no stranger to Quebec, if you would, played his junior hockey here with the Montreal Junior, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. How big was that? Like, how big of a get was that for Montreal? And if everything goes well, how many games could we truthfully probably see Jake Allen get this year?
That's the money question. That's what everybody wants to know. And as we're taping this, we don't know whether or not he's starting against Edmonton in this 3rd game of the season. I would suspect it'll be Carey Price, but it won't surprise me if it's Jake Allen. But the interesting thing there is, like, I know that the Canadiens have a plan where maybe they've earmarked Carey Price for 36 out of 56 games, but this division is so tight that if we get to a couple months into the season and the Canadiens are trending towards 3rd place or 4th place in the division, or even sitting in 5th place and on the outside looking in, you could see Carey Price going from what was supposed to be 36 starts to 40 or 41 or 42, because he is, at the end of the day, the biggest superstar on this team. He's the most important player that they have, regardless of all the additions and the depth that they have. And it's not a knock on Jake Allen, because Jake Allen is a 1B goaltender. Even Marc Bergevin had a hard time referring to him as a backup. He's proven himself as a guy who can start in this league if you have an injury, and he's proven himself as a guy that in his first year in a backup role to Jordan Binnington, he played he played 24 games, I think, and had the best numbers of his career. So this is a guy that's going to be very important for the Canadians as they try to get more rest to Carey Price and fit into that model that the NHL teams are going with now, where you know the more rest you can give your goalie if you have ambitions of being a playoff team, the more it's going to pay off down the line.
No, I absolutely agree with you there, Eric. And, you know, you look at a guy like Jake Allen, I mean, from New Brunswick, of course, from 90 minutes from my house, you know, Jake's a good kid. He was excited to be, you know, basically come back home and be close to his family as well. Two more questions I want to ask you, and then I'll let you get on with your day. And number one is we're going to talk about the Corey Perry signing. A lot of people were surprised to see it, but at the same time, for the price Montreal was able to get him for, he did clear waivers to hit the taxi squad. How big of a get will he be come postseason time? You saw what he did with Dallas and Rick Bowness and the guys down there last year in the Stanley Cup final, but I think that's probably one of my favorite acquisitions Marc Bergevin was able to acquire.
Yeah, I'm sure they're thrilled that they got to keep him. I was skeptical that that would be the case. I figured that somebody might bite at the league minimum, knowing what he could bring. I understand the argument that nobody signed him prior to coming to Montreal for the league minimum, so they could have had him, and that ended up being the case. But it's a different thing before camp starts, and it's another thing after camp starts once, you know, the buzz gets around that he looks good and everything's fine there, and there's no real warning signs that he's slowing down anymore. He's not fleet of foot to begin with, but you know what you get with Corey Perry, and his influence on this room, I would suggest, is going to be massive as we move along through the season, and not just coming to the postseason, because you got to get there first. And you look at the style of game that we're seeing through the first couple, and as everything is magnified, right? Like as we move along, you know, in a typical 82 game season, by the time you get to game 41, you see a total hike in the style of game and the performance and the importance of every point in the standings. Well, in a 56 game season, you get 15 games in, and all of a sudden you're going to start seeing playoff style hockey. And you might even see it sooner because of the nature of the fact that there's 7 teams playing against each other, and that's it. And you know, the dynamic where the Canadians are going to play Vancouver 3 times this week, it's going to create that playoff situation. And I think that's where Corey Perry is going to be that much more important, not just as you look at the Canadians, if you assume they're a playoff team, you know, he's got to be playing. But as we go along this regular season, then the games take on playoff variety. Or, you know, the Canadians have to play against Calgary and Winnipeg and Ottawa, where they're heavier teams, and the rivalry is intense. You know, Ottawa not being in the same category as Calgary and Winnipeg, but on the rivalry front they are. That's where you're going to need Corey Perry.
And of course, we're going to close this thing out, Eric, with the rumor mill and some fun stuff. Of course, every Montreal Canadiens fan saw it trending last week, of course, and that was Pierre-Luc Dubois on the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, there's a lot of speculation there. You know, when the French reporter asked a question, he started to smile. You saw everything going on. Is there a scenario that the Montreal Canadiens could land a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois, and would they be willing to pay the price Columbus would be looking for?
Well, the biggest question you have to answer if you're thinking about it from the Canadiens' perspective is how much greater does the opportunity become for them to win now if they get him? And that's kind of the opportunity cost that they have to weigh here. It's not an easy decision. There's the 14-day quarantine that we mentioned beforehand if you're going to make that move during the season. And there's so much pressure on the Canadiens to make the playoffs. You know, if they pull this move off and handicap their roster for a certain amount of time and suddenly miss the playoffs, well, that's 1 out of 2 years that Pierre-Luc Dubois is making $5 million. And it's gone. And so it's a really hard move to make during the season. And from Columbus's end of it, you're not trading Pierre-Luc Dubois if you don't get a top flight centerman coming back. So all the people who, you know, tweet at me and send me messages, you know, respectfully, if you're talking about Philip Deneau as the centerpiece to this deal, like, just call in the radio with that stuff. It's nonsense. You know, like there's no chance that that's what Jarmo Kekalainen is settling for when there's a number of teams outside of the Canadiens that are going to be interested in a player who's 22, has already proven himself, and still has a ceiling to get to. So, and he plays center, which is, you know, the most influential position outside of the net. So, you know, there's so many things that need to line up for a Pierre-Luc Dubois trade to Montreal in season to actually happen that it makes it so unlikely. But to answer your question, it's still something that has to be on the radar, because as long as this player who is reportedly interested in being in Montreal and doesn't want to be in Columbus anymore remains with the Blue Jackets, the buzz isn't going to die down about him in these parts. So And of course, a guy like Marc Bergevin, who has spent 9 years talking about the fact that you can never get these players, it's an opportunity that he has in front of him. And yes, he might look at Nick Suzuki and say, I have that player right now, and he's becoming that player. I have Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who is trending towards becoming that player, and perhaps in 2 years from now, when he's 22, looks exactly like what Pierre-Luc Dubois looks like now. So that the big question is he willing to part with one of those pieces because he feels that it gives him a better chance to win now? Because in the future, the answer is there too. It's pretty easy to say, I have as good of a chance to win for 10 years if I have Pierre-Luc Dubois instead of Jesperi Kotkaniemi and whatever else gets in the deal. So, it's really about a win now thing, and it's a tough decision to make. And there's two parties involved. It's about what Columbus gets offered from other teams and what they're willing to accept. And I don't think Columbus is in any rush here. Like they have the player for 2 years at $5 million. They will not be forced into taking something that is less than what they think he's worth to them, or at least something they can digest. The one thing that could press them in this situation is if Dubois is really not happy there and it becomes a distraction to the point where it's hurting the team, they have a window too. They've got Seth Jones up for a contract in 2 years. They've got Jonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlikins up for contracts in 2 years. They could walk for free. And Zach Werenski in 2 years is an RFA, and that's going to cost a ton of money. Their window is open now, despite the fact that they've lost a lot of key players in situations like this one they find themselves in with Dubois. So they can't just throw in the towel on this season. They can't throw in the towel on next season. So there's a lot of things to consider here on this. And I think I understand why it's topical in these parts, and it's always going to be so long as that player is there and he doesn't want to be there. So it's interesting. It's a lot of food for thought, but I wouldn't be holding my breath on it happening anytime soon.
I appreciate it, Eric. And as always, thanks again for your time, man. I mean, I know things are, like you said, you're in the fun zone now. Everything's ready to roll. And, you can catch Eric on Sportsnet, of course, on Twitter at Eric Engels. Eric, this has been an absolute pleasure. Eric Engels, the NHL Insider on Sportsnet. I appreciate it.
Oh, it was great being with you guys, and all the best to the people in the province, and stay healthy and safe. And let's just get to the finish line of this pandemic business.
Absolutely, Eric. Stay safe. We'll chat soon, my friend. Take care and enjoy the rest of the year.
Take care.